Sorry, Chair Fernandez, we're ready to go whenever you are. Please.
I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Planning Commission meeting of April 25th, 2023 of the city of Sebastopol. And start with a roll call, please.
Thank you. Sorry, is this better? It seems to be a little finicky. Commissioner Ottinger. Commissioner Burns. And Cody, I think you have a message to.
You're muted, Deborah.
Thank you. It wouldn't let me unmute. It said the host won't let you unmute in this meeting. Yes, here. Can you hear me now?
She did respond. But
All right, we can see you.
I heard
Oh.
her.
but it's not playing. in the
Okay, so
room.
we're having a quick technical difficulty, which we'll have our tech person work out with the sound. But Commissioner Burns?
Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Deborah. Says it won't let her unmute.
All right. here we go.
Can
We
you
were
guys-
able to hear you. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Oh, I think we can hear you now, Debbie, because we can hear your
It
keyboard.
was-
Oh, we got it.
Okay, it's telling me the host won't let me unmute, that I can't do this action. So it says the host is denying participants to unmute. So there you go.
Okay, I will just give,
I'm gonna
I'm
mute
gonna
my,
make you a co-host so that you won't have that issue.
okay, I'm just gonna mute myself right now.
Perfect. Okay.
I'm here. Bye.
Thank you. Commissioner Burns is present. Commissioner Kelly is excused absent tonight. Vice Chair Fritz
Here.
and Chair Fernandez.
Here.
So we have a quorum, 4 people and 1 absent.
Great, thank you. Move on to item number 2, which is comments from the public on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So anyone wishing to comment can, if you're present, can just come up to the podium, or online, you can raise your virtual or your actual hand.
Okay, and while I'm looking at the gallery, I can note that I don't see anyone looking to comment, and we have not received any comments for items not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 3, if there's any statements of conflict of interest from commissioners. Okay, don't see that anyone has any. Moving on to item number 4, we do have 4 sets of minutes to approve. So we'll start with the February 8th, 2022 minutes and ask if anyone has any changes to any of the minutes there. Okay, seeing none, does anyone want to make a motion for approval?
I move that we approve the minutes of February 8th, 2022.
I second that.
Okay, the motion second. There's no further comments, then we'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez.
Aye,
That motion passes.
thank you. And moving on to now the minutes of May 24th, 2022. And does anyone have any changes for that? Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I had a question, and maybe this is a thing, but I'm wondering if there was something that was not heard correctly or picked up correctly. On page 2, this is from Alan, the consultant, his first comment. He mentioned several times in that paragraph, atomic units. Is that a thing? And talking about the vacation rental ordinance and listings, and there's several references to atomic units, and I couldn't quite figure out what that.
So you're talking about May 24th?
Oh, no, May
Page two.
10th.
Ah, we're on May 24th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's actually reversed on here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so let's go with May 24th. If anyone has any comments or changes for that?
I have just one small, I
Sure,
think
go
it's a
ahead, Paul.
typo. Again, this is also page 2.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, I take that back. Sorry. Another. That's
Right.
it's another, that's the next one.
No problem. I do have just some minor things on page 5. At the very bottom, Carrie, on your comment at the very last thing, I'm not sure if you meant to say, but I'm going to put it down here as well instead of, but I'm not going to put it down here as well.
That is correct. That
Okay.
not should be deleted.
All right. And then page, see, 13. Let's see. And let's see, actually, oh wait, sorry about that. Oh, page 14, sorry. Page 14. So my first comments on that top of page 14, where it says my point is that, and then it says it that. So one of those that the second that needs to be deleted. And the it. So I should say my point is that it's kind of a separate thing. Okay, that's all I had. And there's no other, I'll go ahead and make a motion for approval of the minutes of May 24th, 2022.
I move we approve the minutes of May 24th, 1922.
Are you, oh, I just moved, so you're seconding?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought you called for it. I was busy.
No problem. Okay, so we have a
Second,
motion and a second. Go ahead for a call for a vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
Commissioner Ottinger,
yes.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Yes.
and Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
The minutes for May 10th, no,
May
24th, thank
24th.
you. May
Yes.
24th are now adopted.
Okay,
Thank you.
now we're going on to May 10th. So Paul, go ahead.
So this is the atomic unit question on the top of page 2 from the consultant. I just wasn't sure what that might reference. It sounds like something from physics class that I don't remember, but I don't know what it has to do with vacation rentals.
I think that was automatic link. I'm not sure, but
Well, because then it doesn't make sense in all those situations. Maybe it is automatic atomic unit. I don't know, but because it did
yeah,
it
I
3
can
times in
check
that
on that and bring
paragraph.
the minutes back so that we get it correct. That's probably the easiest way to deal with
Yeah.
it. There's, yeah.
Were there any other changes? Okay, so we'll table the approval of those minutes.
Yeah, we'll table that and we'll talk to
Okay.
Alan and make sure we get the right.
Okay.
And if needed, then I'll have an explanation at the
Okay.
next meeting too, because I don't recall that. So,
You know, it was a year ago. Maybe it made sense at the time.
yeah, and I do apologize for that. That's,
All right, then we're going to go ahead and move on to the minutes of December 13th, 2022, and ask if anyone has any changes. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, this is on page 2. And it would just, so my comments kind of just below the middle of the page. It's like the 3rd line down says to say that R5 is not technology. I think it's technically a multifamily instead of technology. Yeah, that was it.
And
sorry, that was page 3,
Page 2,
page 2.
just below the like middle of the page.
And then I had some this was the meeting that I attended from Mexico where I had kind of bad connection. And on page 9, there were a couple, like 4 different places that was inaudible. And I went through and listened to the meeting carefully. And what I did is I sent those corrections or those audibles best as I could. I'm pretty sure they were accurate to Carrie.
Yeah, would you like me to read
Yeah,
the
okay.
correction
So this
and
is on
but just
page-
read the paragraph
Yeah,
with,
it's on page 9. So give a second for us to get there.
okay, so page 9.
Yeah.
Okay, so it should read, there is a lot of talk about identifying different parcels throughout this housing and throughout this housing report, I see outreach. I know we've talked about education on ADUs and I wanted to make sure there's education outreach for spaces that might be easily convertible. For example, we had a request for the Planning Commission on First Street when they purchased an area and they had a structure in the back that really wasn't set to be livable and they wanted to get some money to have it. And they were money to have it and we were able to encourage them through a couple of different ways. So there could be a list of available places in our city where we can outreach to the owners, the costs and steps of converting space. Sorry, I got to jump back to develop new meeting space. In our city that is outreached cost to develop new building space being a room or attic or barn. When you add them together, it's a lot of space that when it takes to develop new building space. And then it goes on, so we shouldn't, and the rest is clear.
Okay. There was also a couple inaudible on page 19, but very minor comments and I really wasn't able to make those out. So just kind of leave those as is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if there's no other comments, looking for a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes of December 13th, 2022,
As amended.
as amended.
I second.
Okay, the motion is second for approval minutes of December 13th, 2022 with the amendments. Go ahead and call for the vote.
Venus!
Ooh,
Our tech folks will take care of that. Just Chair Fritz, just so you know, you're really quiet coming through the sound, so you might need to move a little closer. And our tech support, I'm hoping you're able to just deal with that while we take the roll vote. Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez.
aye.
Thank you. That is the final set of minutes, and that also passes 4-0 with one absent.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5A, 7631 Hillsburg Avenue, conditional use permit for residential use in a commercial district.
Thank you. So this is a conditional use permit from the Pacific Realty Group, and they are proposing to convert the lower level of a commercial space to two approximately 710 square feet, one bedroom.
Shut up, nigger.
Units with a shared hallway. The current space is unfinished and will incorporate two egress windows located on the south side of the building opposite to Healdsburg Avenue. There is no change to the grading, landscape plan, or exterior, as this project only proposes to add those two egress windows for the bedrooms. The ground floor of the building has not been built out yet with tenant improvements, so minimal demolition would be needed to change the units from commercial to residential. The bathroom units for the proposed use are to be located where the current restrooms are located, and there are a few other internal and external modifications. As a conversion, the two units are required to provide a minimum of 50 square feet of open space and the applicant has been able to section off a part of the rear building facing the parking lot to accommodate that use, that shared open space. And they are also receptive to the planning commission to provide some sort of fencing if the planning commission wants to go that route. Let's see if there's anything else in here. There are a few recommended conditions of approval that that staff is asking the applicant to adhere to. Some of those will be construction limited to an 18th month timeframe maximum. This may be extended by the building official, but only due to a state of emergency. Otherwise, any extensions would need to go to the planning commission for approval. No external construction fencing shall be erected on the north or west sides of the site. And if the other residential units are occupied during construction, access to these units and associated parking shall be maintained. And the planning department may approve temporary closure of on-site parking spaces if required for short periods of time for construction logistics. I think I will leave it at that for right now. And if the planning commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And I know that the applicant is here to answer any additional questions the commission may have.
So start with questions for staff. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so the exhibit B, the recommended conditions of approval. First off, there's two number ones. My question has to do with the first number one. Is this because there's a reference to lights, fixtures, and exterior lighting being reviewed by design review? I'm just wondering, does this have to go back to design review, or is that? I'm just wondering if that has to go to design review after this point.
I would say no, these are minor changes that would
Okay.
be administrative.
Okay, so I guess do we need that condition then about the exterior light fixtures? Can we just strike that then?
I would not strike it only just because it's a standard condition. Even if staff is reviewing it, we still don't want lights. If they did decide to change the lights, we still don't want the lights, shining up the sky or blaring into the street or things like that.
Yeah, I
And
guess-
and Kathy can probably note whether or not she's
Yeah.
changing the lights.
Like this isn't the standard conditions of approval. This is the project specific. So isn't that
Correct.
light fixture issue in the standard conditions of
It-
approval
It is.
or not?
I don't believe it is in the standard
Okay.
conditions. It is in our general plan and we do that in design review. The project is so old, I don't know if it was done in the original conditions.
Okay. My other question is an item 6C regarding construction activities. It looks like there's something maybe missing from the sentence. The second sentence of C says an encroachment permit shall be required for any.
Work within the public right of way.
Okay, maybe we should add
Thank you.
that.
That is actually in the standard conditions, so we could actually just strike that.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe just strike the second sentence, leave the first part about closures on Healdsburg Avenue,
Correct, yeah.
and then just
yeah.
strike the second half a sentence. And then I had a question about so I see that they're trying to, provide some open space on the ground floor for the two new units. Is that something that we have the ability to waive for this project, or is that just a requirement that
We
they have
can-
to do it?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Fritz. It is in our zoning ordinance as a zoning standard. So we don't have the right to waive it,
Okay.
but they did find a way to propose it.
That is all my questions. Thank you.
Any questions of staff? Okay, all right. So at this point, I'll ask the applicant if they would like to make any comments for this project.
Just so you know, you changed the security, so I need to ask her to unmute. It just takes a second.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm so sorry I'm not there. I apologize. I'll be there in the future, but this was too short a time frame for me to be there for this hearing. I wanted to introduce Mark Nat. I believe he's sitting there in the audience. Mark, you want to just raise your hand if you're there? He is representing our client. I hope
Just so you know,
he's there.
Kathy, it doesn't look like he's here.
Oh, no, he was supposed to be there. All right. Well, my apologies. We really wanted to have somebody there in person, but hopefully I can answer any of your questions. And we are not proposing to change any of the lighting. Thank you, Paul, for asking about that. I just want to say that I'm very happy that staff has been super supportive. You know, our client was looking for a retail tenant to do a tenant improvement, and he was told it could take a year or more to find anyone that would want the space. And when he heard that, and we had our positive response from you all about our project next door going 100% residential, he asked me to ask if that would be possible. And I quickly did a sketch of the 2 units, and we decided, yes, it would make sense to move forward. And I did want to clarify one item. You'll notice in the sketch that the one bathroom is more into the hall, and that is the bathroom that was planned for the commercial space. Its foundation has been framed and its walls, so it's there. The other bathroom would be new. But this gives me an opportunity to give you 2 fully accessible units there in Sebastopol. The question about open space did come up, and I was hoping we could just waive it since these are sort of more of an urban type of living units. But it didn't appear that there was an option to get it waived. And so we'd like to propose a patio area there on the south side, which would be very nice and sunny. And I was saying, if you felt the need to have any kind of fencing rather than having a 6-foot privacy fence or something, of using the similar lattice style fence that we did under the oak tree in front of the house adjacent. But I'm thinking if it's more of a patio area, it can be used informally by the tenants. We already do have space for bike locker areas in the closets that are there. And I really we have no issues with the conditions. We're totally fine with that. This is a new owner. We want to try to turn this around as quickly as possible. And it was mortifying to me to see the building sit there for so many years myself. So I'm hopeful that you all will approve us, and I'm here to answer any other questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Any commissioners have any questions to the applicant?
I just have, I don't want to get hung up on this open space issue, but I'm just wondering if there is, I'm just kind of looking at your site plan, maybe doing something on the west side on Murphy and that kind of landscaped area. And the only reason, there's 2 reasons. One, I don't think that it's such a small little space there. It doesn't seem like it's really going to be particularly useful or really desirable for anyone to use that as open space. And there's also, because of its proximity to the accessible kind of aisle between the parking spaces, there's a kind of a curb there. And so I'd have some concerns about, it's such a small space, people just kind of falling off the curb there. So that's why I asked if we could just waive that requirement, because I agree, I don't really see a need to have the open space here, but if we have to have it, I'm just wondering if you think it's possible to put it maybe on the Murphy side of the project, rather than, right adjacent to that walkway with the curb there. And I guess if the answer is no, and you have to put it where that curb is, then I would suggest maybe some kind of fencing or barrier along that edge, just so people don't fall off of it,
I get your point, Paul. I would actually like John to perhaps address this. He met with the owner out at the site, and they looked at different parts of the site and seemed to feel that this proposal was the best. My concern on the Murphy side was that it's kind of a busy or noisy location. And also, unfortunately, PG&E required that giant vault where it would have been a nice place to have some open space. And so, yeah. John, did you want to say anything? Because you've met out there and looked at the site. Maybe that's unusual for me to ask staff, but I know that he did look at that.
Yeah, I would say so. In that that side over there, there's kind of a pretty steep drainage swell on that side, so it's hard to have some sort of flat area. The area that's kind of marked off in that red perimeter that we noted in the staff report is kind of the most flat general area. I did look at the front to see if there was a way of, doing some sort of frontage, small space along Healdsburg, but felt that that part of the open space could be too busy, and would definitely require some sort of fencing out there to keep people, kind of off the street. But it would be a good way to engage the street. So that was kind of my first initial response, is to start there. And then we kind of worked around to the back side of the building.
What about, I'm just kind of looking at the photographs and I see that the single family house has a sort of fenced yard area. And then between that fenced yard area and the back of sidewalk is some space with the existing oak tree. Can that be kind of common open space?
Yeah,
there?
Paul, I actually did suggest that as one option under the tree there. I'm not opposed to really any place. It's hard to know how someone might use the space. I think what we could do is go ahead and put pavers in where we're proposing an open space, so there is a flat level space. And you can see in this picture the lattice fence that I was suggesting. That's what I would put around there. If I agree, I know there's a little curb there because of the ramp. We could do that. And I'm thinking that under the tree is kind of an odd spot also. So because this wasn't designed to be residential, it was obviously, this is an afterthought. I will point out that the units above have their patios upstairs, and the house has both a front and rear yard. So they won't be impacted if people needed, if the two residences needed to use some space outdoor. I think my preference of all is to go ahead and do the area on the south side. And if you feel a fence is necessary, propose using the same lattice style fence that you see in this picture in front of the house, and see how it goes. If it seems like it's not a very inviting space, we can do something under the tree. The thing is, we don't want to do any kind of paving under the oak tree. It was conditioned to just be mulch there because of the root zone. So it's not like we could level it out or make kind of an obvious spot to sit under there.
I guess I'm just wondering, from a staff perspective, can, if we say that they need the open space, can we call that the open space and not make them, because I think it's kind of nice to have the landscaping outside that unit. You have a couple trees there. I personally think if I was living in the unit, it would be nicer to have those trees and the landscaping outside the window rather than just a hardscape. So I'm just trying to see if there's a way that we can say you have the open space. It's kind of a common open space under the tree. Do we care how they use it, or if there's a bench, or if it's really even that usable? Because again, I don't think that the space between the sidewalk and the building is going to be that usable either for anyone. So
yeah,
I'm just trying to sort of figure out, like, how do we allow this to go ahead with and still comply, meet the conditions of the zoning code in terms of this open space requirement. There's obviously, more than enough space there. And if it's mulched, you could still put a blanket down and sit down there, or stand out there and smoke a cigarette, or I don't know.
Yeah, well,
we would 50 square feet of open space.
Yeah, I really appreciate, Paul, your creativity in addressing the issue, and we're happy to work with you anyway. Yes, I agree. Landscaping is nice. And that's why I was pushing back against doing it in the front of the building, because I think it really needs the softening of the landscaping between the public sidewalk and the building on Healdsburg Ave. I think we could still landscape the back, but maybe carve out less, it's 200 square feet and we're only required to do 100 square feet. So what we could do is a combination of some landscaping, maybe some shrubs between the sidewalk instead of a fence, a little bit of vertical shrubbery between the sidewalk and the building that could be used as an open space. But I'm happy to do whatever. I just really hoping he'll approve us.
Yeah,
So,
no, I would actually suggest maybe just the trees, because then, if you did pavers and the trees, then at least the roots are getting some water, and you could put a chair out there. If you start putting shrubs and things, that's just going to take up more space and make it
Okay.
less usable. But maybe if there's just a tree, almost like, a tree in a tree rake kind of thing,
right.
then at least you get a tree and you'll be able to get some shade for that bedroom window, and
Yeah,
shade for the people sitting there. It might make it more appealing if there's a tree there.
I'm
You might
happy
have
to do
sit under
that.
a tree.
If others.
Staff doesn't think the oak tree area works, I guess.
So I can respond about the project history, because I do agree with Kathy that the retention of that tree in front, the large oak tree, was definitely a concern for the city a couple times. And I don't think, well, I will say we would not want to have any additional grading or, it's already had roots cut and whatnot from the foundation and stuff. So I think preference would be to leave that alone and not have folks kind of being invited to trample over it and compact the roots potentially. But I do agree with Kathy there. You would not want to do pavers or anything. And it does, it's their property. That doesn't mean they can't take a blanket out there if they want to.
Mhm.
From a practical standpoint, in terms of the planning department, we do have a number of requirements in the zoning ordinance for open space, that it not be the teeny little strips between parking and the drainage swale on the west side, which is really a drainage swale and a slope that can't really be your open space.
Mhm.
So, but I think there are some viable options, and I think John can probably talk to those better than I can as the project planner.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, maybe a potential other one. I don't know the exact square footage, but on the screen now, just to the right of the traffic cone there seems to be, some space there that could potentially be at least one of the 50 square foot open space requirements. And that's just right off that window there, which I don't remember which windows you're changing out to, or if.
That won't be affected. That will
Okay.
be a kitchen window. But it
Okay.
is right next to the trash enclosure there, which
Yeah.
isn't the nicest. I still
Yeah, and
think your spot on the south side makes the most sense for us, I think. And my clients are supportive of it.
Okay.
And I think as staff, when John and I talked about it, we were like, well, you could put a little bistro table and a couple chairs out there and enjoy the sunshine, have a conversation with a friend kind of a thing, even though it's a small space.
Yeah.
What is the distance between the building and the sidewalk? Do you know what that is?
I
Anyone?
don't have that dimension. I think it's at least 6 feet, which is what a typical front porch would be.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and ask my question.
We want to make sure, Paul,
okay.
you done? Okay.
That's all my questions.
ahead.
Thanks.
I guess this is going back to staff again, because we're looking at an existing commercial site and we're changing it to be residential. It already comes with some givens because it was commercial. It seems that's a good reason to waive any particular requirement or to ease it somehow and let them do. I mean, if I lived there, I would want to go out that back door and sit on a bench with a planter, and I'd be perfectly happy. The tree would be nice, but I think it's perfectly reasonable to waive it under this situation, since it's a conversion of commercial to residential.
I think so. My interpretation of the zoning ordinance would be that it is in the development standards for the zone. Therefore, it would need a variance if you were to waive it However, it is something, because I know we're with our new housing element, we will be looking at making some of those standards easier to have that flexibility. I'll just call it flex zoning in the grant I applied for, to make sure that it wasn't small things like this that were potentially holding something up. I mean, what you don't know is John and Kathy went through the whole variance and what could, can we at least find it? I mean, in essence, they have found it at 200 square feet, whether it's used or not, it is there and available to them. So we don't need to waive it. And in this case, it would require variance, because we wouldn't want people coming in all the time and saying, oh, it's fine, I don't need open space. When it is nice I've lived in a 640 square foot apartment for a number of years and a 500 square foot apartment for a number of years. It was really nice to have those just somewhere you could go to be outside and, put a plant or two or something like that. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
But it's definitely something I'll note, and as we start working on that flex zoning stuff, and that's actually potentially reducing the requirement from a conditional use permit like this to do 100% residential to doing it in kind, and to being able to do it by right in certain areas. And so that's something that we'll certainly have input on. I'm anticipating the next year and a half.
And Kathy, I just had some comments here, and this is regarding to one of the conditions of approval regarding the fact that, how long this project has taken and the neighbors having endured noise, dust, etc. And where the staff therefore recommends the following conditions of approval. So going through some of those conditions, I was wondering if those are acceptable and understood, and if there's any questions or issues with any of those conditions.
Well, thank you, Chair, for asking. I had gone back and forth a bit with Kari before she wrote it up, and we did add that on Saturday that you could work in the interior of the space, because initially she just had Monday through Friday, and we really want to try to get this done as quickly as possible. And if we could be painting inside or putting up drywall or something, it really shouldn't disturb neighbors. And so she did revise the condition that we could work on inside on Saturdays, and we were very grateful for that. So we have no problems with any of the conditions.
Okay, great, thank you. And Paul, thank you for your comments. It's good to have your expertise and looking at that. I don't know if Commissioner Burns, do you have any questions for applicant?
I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Then I'll go ahead and open for public comment. If anyone from the public would like to make a comment on this project, in person, come up to the podium, or online, you raise your virtual hand or your actual hand.
Okay, I don't see anyone online. Is there someone here who'd like to? Yeah, if you do, just go ahead and you can kind of line up at the podium. And there is a 3-minute timer on the screen over there that you can hopefully see while you're speaking.
Hi, my name's Carol Capria, and I live on Healdsburg Avenue. And I want to start off, I have a few comments and some questions, and I want to start off by saying that the lighting was an issue for us. There are 14 lights on the corner building and 7 lights on the single family home that were on 24/7 since the electricity was turned on, or since it's been a while, it's been weeks. And the lighting is very bright and goes across the street into our home. And we had to keep our shades and blinds drawn in the evening and at night. We don't usually do that, but we did because it was so bright. And we wanted to say something to someone, but we just thought that somebody was going to get it sooner or later. Either the switch didn't work or someone was forgetting to turn the lights off during the daytime. Or Public Works, I mean, some workers live in town. I'm sure it was noticed. I did speak to some community members that commented on the lights and said, what's up with the lighting? Anyway, I'm grateful now because the lighting has been turned off since the agenda went out on Thursday with the conditions. It was such a relief. We were thrilled. The lights are off. Now, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we would like to make it known that it should be a consideration for the neighborhood. Let's see. And the second thing I wanted to say was that we certainly think switching over to apartments, oh, darn, I'm so fast here. Anyway, it's a good idea, but those folks in those apartments are going to be basically living on the road. We live up on a knoll and we're set back, and the house shakes, you hear the noise. If there's anything they can do to those two apartments to soundproof, to make it so it's livable and enjoyable, and to not have all that happening in their home. And I also wanted to say that I had a question about affordable housing. I know I have a feeling that can't be known ahead of time, but Section 8 and affordable housing, how does that play into apartments that are going to be for rent? And last but not least, I know we get notified by the city for city council meetings with important information. I know the people in the neighborhood, I did receive a postcard, and I just didn't know how, if there's a way that we can be notified by the planning department or the commission with upcoming agendas and important information for the whole city, not just for people who live in the immediate neighborhood. But I do appreciate that. I think it's very important the neighborhood gets notified. But I know people outside of the neighborhood ask me questions and they don't know. So, there was a time on the working conditions for
Just kind of
9
wrap
to
it up.
5 and
Thank you.
7 to 8. It was confusing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Appreciate it. I'm sorry.
No, thank you for your comments.
Oh, you're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Glenn Pino, Healdsburg Avenue, across the street from this proposed project. As you stated early on, this commercial project went through as a commercial building. And I read in the agenda that you proposed shielding the outside lights. I find that it's ironic that if you're going to convert a commercial building to a residential building, why don't the lighting reflect that you're going into a residential situation? It's glaring. It's my comment from the neighbors on Dufrank that this project has been an eyesore and a glaring intrusion as you come up to Healdsburg Avenue. I would put it in the conditions that they either remove some of the lighting or insist that it shields the lighting so that we're not looking at bare bulb lighting on this project. The lighting in front of the main door is appropriate for a residential, but the way it's lit up, it feels like I'm living across the street from a convenience store, honestly. So I really want the Planning Commission to put a little more emphasis on the aesthetic here on this particular issue. And there is more, but I'm really concerned about traffic mitigation. And I don't know when the Planning Commission is going to address this, but as you move forward to look at the other project, I really insist that Caltrans gets involved, because the traffic mitigation on the corner Murphy, Dufrank, Healdsburg Avenue, it needs great attention, particularly if the Bodega project goes through and people find a way to skirt the traffic off Bodega Avenue. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in public?
Let me just take a look at the gallery, but I do not see anybody. So I don't think there are any further public comments.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comments, bring it back, and maybe if we can address some of those issues. That, you know, a good point was brought up. So this was a multi-use project initially, right? Which was residential and then commercial underneath. So if it was all residential, it would need to meet certain lighting requirements. Does that meet those requirements? And secondly, what could be done based on the comments from the neighbors?
Sure. So in terms of the lighting, we don't have different design guidelines for residential versus commercial. Our design guidelines, and which I believe were adopted in 2010, 2011. That's the date on the document. So that they're certainly, when this project initially went through, this was part of the review. I wasn't here, John wasn't here, so we're kind of just going on the dates of the design guidelines. Does talk about light glare and minimizing light glare on adjoining properties. It may be a detail that just got missed in the plans, but I think certainly it is something that you could discuss with the applicant and put further conditions. You know, it's why we put in 2016, we updated the general plan, which I think was after the approval for this project. And I'd have to have Kathy confirm that, which did talk about the exterior lighting and the dark sky policies that the city now has in a more enhanced way, because it's now in our general plan as well as our design guidelines. And so that's why we put that condition on, knowing that it wasn't going to design review, but we wanted to make sure that any changes that would reflect that. So that's certainly something that the commission could consider.
Okay, and Kathy, I don't know if you want to make comments on that.
Yes,
what can be
thank
done?
you. Thank you, Chairman. I'm actually appalled that that's the condition out there. I did not specify those lights. So I am immediately going to talk to the owner about changing the fixtures, or we need to figure out something that is not causing that issue. I'm a big dark sky compliant person. They are facing down, but the fact that you're seeing bare bulbs or that it's on 24/7 is unacceptable. And I don't know what was, there's no one living there now. So there's no one kind of going in and out and turning switches on and off. And so I need to talk to the owner about setting some sort of timer so that they either dim or go off at a certain time. And I also would like to see maybe a change in the fixtures so that they're not causing this problem. I have a neighbor down the street from me whose light is glaring in my window all night long, and I totally get it. So I'm really sorry. I had no idea that was a problem. And we did specify dark sky compliant lighting for this project originally, but not as many fixtures as were put on the building. And, you know, once the project was sold from my original client, I really had no control whatsoever on what happened with the building. And I'm very sorry it took so long and was such a nightmare. But we have a good owner now. As you can see, he finished it out. But I definitely want to address the lighting issue. I'm very sorry to the neighbors that this has been a problem.
Great, thank you. And I don't know if you just want to make a comment regarding the soundproofing, one of the.
Oh,
neighbors
yes.
made as well.
So I don't know what the construction is of the neighbors, because sometimes just simple wood frame transmits more noise than a stucco building. And the more mass you have, the less of a problem it is. And what we can do is double sheetrock inside if it's needed. The windows, I'm not sure you know, they're designed for commercial use. So I am not sure what the sound mitigation measure is on those windows. I am hoping that it's not an issue. We're also going to have to do some sort of window covering system, shades of some sort, and we can look at that. That really won't help with sound though. But it is possible to, I've done projects next to freeways and on highways, and there are ways of mitigating that. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a concern with the construction method that was in this building as perhaps some of the older wood frame buildings that might be across the street. But yeah, it's definitely a commercial location. Whoever lives there is going to know what they're getting, you know, when they see the space, they know where it is. And a lot of people like a more urban living. So we're hoping that we'll attract two tenants that like this type of living. But you know, it is not in a cul-de-sac somewhere for sure. We know that.
And
Thank you.
Commissioner Burns might have a comment. on
Yes, Commissioner Burns, go ahead.
Yeah, I was back to the lighting. I had a question about that as well. And thank you so much for being so considerate and concerned about the neighbors with the lighting. But I guess my ultimate concern, or my additional concern, is that when you change out the lighting, because it's great that you want to put it on a timer now, but when different tenants move in and they have the capacity to control their own lighting, how can you ensure that this won't become, you know, an ongoing issue?
Thank you, Commissioner. I think what we need to do is look at changing the fixtures so that they are more contained, that there's no light spill, that light is where it should be, and not. I think these are not the right choice of fixtures, and I think we can handle it with the fixtures.
Okay, so it's not just the timer that it would be the fixtures as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe even the wattage and, you know, the light bulb or whatever on there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, Harry, if you wanted to, 1 second. There was a question regarding the traffic and Murphy, and I know there's a lot of stuff coming up on that. I thought maybe you might want to.
Sure. Yeah, I would be happy to. I've got traffic, the notification question, and the affordable housing questions, what
Thank
I
you.
got. So I guess I'll start with the traffic for the chair. So as I said earlier, we did update the general plan in 2016. That was adopted by City Council and went through the Planning Commission as well. Part of that does look at circulation improvements throughout the city in order to address the growth that we're anticipating, such as this project and the project next door. There are 3 locations in the city that were identified for potential traffic control, which could either be a stoplight or a roundabout, as identified in the general plan. We'll look at both of those. One of those is Covert Lane and 116, so up by Redwood Credit Union. One is Healdsburg and Murphy. So we do recognize this is a location that would need traffic control. And then the other is Furcrest and 116 down on the south side of town. Our city's traffic consultant, who we work pretty closely with on this and the next project and the next, you know, the project up at the O'Reilly site that's happening. He looks at triggers and thresholds for, what is the traffic being added? And we have been meeting with him as well as with engineering, and Tony Bertolero is city engineering manager. She's on this meeting as well, so she's hearing this. And so we, given those larger projects and the project next door, we have been having discussions about, okay, we need to understand where the thresholds are in terms of when we might need, and I would safely say Healdsburg Murphy doesn't have space for a roundabout, so it's probably a traffic signal. Covert Lane could be either. There is a lot of right of way there. Both of those involve working with Caltrans. And we do send for these projects, not this one because the traffic anticipated is actually less, I believe, for the residential than it would have been for the retail. When you think about coming and going from a retail all day long. so this is actually less traffic than the original project would have had, but when the project next door goes forward, there will be a traffic study done as part of that to check in and look at those things. And we do always look at the other projects around that are, sort of cumulative and where we're going to break that threshold. We'd already have the Woodmark apartment project down on Bodega included in that traffic model and information as well. So. And then actually I'll go to the notification next, because this is part of how you might find out about this and other things. So yes, the city's notification procedures for a private project like this that comes to the Planning Commission is to do that mailed notice postcard as well as put it in the paper. We use the Press Democrat. And so, but I realize that's kind of maybe a little antiquated these days, but it is a requirement for the city to do the newspaper notices. And then of course the notice postcards is 600 feet anywhere from the property line. Outside of that, if you go to our city's website, and I'm actually going to show you because I got this question before the meeting as well. And so clearly this is something to I'll just do a little show and tell for anyone on the public. If you go to the city's website, hang on a second, well, it shares my screen, which is ci.sebastopol.ca.us. You will see the subscribe button, and it actually shows up on every single page. You can connect and get any number of email lists you want, including city council agendas, planning and design review board meetings. That says roughly weekly because we have 2 planning commissions and once that's right there. We have 2 planning commissions and 1 design review board meeting. We have housing and homelessness. If you're interested in the fire department, emergency preparedness, climate issues, city council. And then we also have a regular e-newsletter that the city sends out. So if you want to subscribe through all of those or any of those, that's just all you need to do is simply go to the website and hit the subscribe and enter your email in. And then you will get those agendas to be able to kind of glance through for, like, you would have seen this even if you didn't get the notice postcard or like the Annalee crosswalk that we're talking about later tonight. And the e-newsletter. Okay, I might ask for your email because you should be getting that. And we do have a new website, so it'll look different in hopefully a couple weeks. We literally got our second training today on it, so they could go live. But it will have the same functionality too. It might be a little bit more reliable even. So yeah, and then the last question was about affordable housing and Section 8. So any projects 5 units or larger in the city of Sebastopol are subject to our inclusionary housing requirements. So this project is, they would have the option of either making one of the units deed restricted affordable at moderate would meet the requirements, or, and we don't allow this for sale projects, but we do for rental projects, they can pay the in lieu fee for the impact fee, basically, in lieu of providing the unit. I did talk to Kathy. It sounds like they'll probably go with the fee, but they haven't quite decided. We have it in the conditions of approval that they need to show compliance with our inclusionary housing ordinance prior to issuance of a building permit. So we'll need to know by then how they're planning on handling it. In terms of, say they pay the fee or they weren't subject to it, the question about Section 8 is, it is illegal to discriminate against Section 8 vouchers anywhere in the state of California. If you hear about someone discriminating about that, please contact the planning department. We do have contacts like the Legal Aid of Northern California. I might have that acronym wrong, but we do have contacts for enforcement of that, but we need to know about that. So that is how that works. And if it is a deed restricted unit, then we do monitoring and we make sure they've got the income levels and all that kind of stuff. No, the house, it's, all of them are for rent. The home as well. Yeah.
Thank you. It's very thorough. Okay, so bring it back for additional questions or comments.
I just want to weigh in a little bit on the light fixtures. I would just suggest maybe since it is now kind of an all residential, not so much commercial building, maybe even Kathy taking out some of the light fixtures because there are a lot of light fixtures on the project. You know, maybe just the ones, you know, by the doors are really all that's necessary. I mean, even think for the residents, so many lights around shining in their own windows, you know, would be.
I agree 100%,
Good.
Paul. I've been scrolling at my pictures here and kind of appalled at how many light fixtures there are. That was not part of my design, I can tell you. So capping off some of these or making something sort of more of a decorative thing and getting rid of the light, I would agree. So I'm going to have a nice conversation with the owner about it. So.
Okay. Otherwise, I don't have anything else. I think, as I'm sure you all know, I'm very supportive of 100% housing in this district. And I think this makes sense here more as residential than as commercial space. I just don't see it as being a super useful commercial space. So I'm happy to support this application.
Okay. Just a question for the lighting. Is that something that I know, sounds very agreeable, amenable to that, but is it somehow to add to the conditions of approval some way to just make sure?
Yeah, I think changing that on number 1A to a lighting scheme proposed by the applicant that staff can review and approve compared to what is currently there of the light source for all exterior fixtures shall be shielded from adjacent properties and then cut sheets to the design review board or planning application.
Okay,
I think it would be better to address it in that condition
perfect.
than
Good.
what's currently there.
And we should still keep that the fixtures should be shielded because as you saw what happens, it got sold from one to the next owner. It is an entitlement that runs with the land.
Yeah, because absolutely. The owner's amenable, but things could change, and then now they're going in and changing all the light fixtures, and we're back to the same issue. So I definitely agree with that.
I'm totally supportive of that.
Okay.
Can I just, so are we agreeing that this is a staff thing or a design review? Because it seems like this is something staff should be able to handle, correct? We don't need to go to design review board for this.
I would
Correct.
prefer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move for approval of the project with the changes of the conditions of approval.
I'll second
And
that.
do you want us to reiterate what the
Yes,
changes are?
Go ahead.
And John, whenever you're ready. Give us a second. Anything else you want to know about notification or affordable housing?
And I promise none of these units will be atomic.
Might be interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, short-term rentals would not be allowed on this parcel, so I'm glad you said that again.
So the additional requirement that I have on there is the applicant shall provide a lighting scheme to the planning department for their review and approval.
And then we also
Wish
got
it-
rid of that second
Sheila.
sentence of 6C.
Yes, and then on 6C striking, let me go down to it real quick, 1 second. Actually, it would be changing to 7C because I
Yeah.
removed the double ones
Yeah.
there. So 7C, an encroachment permit shall be required for any, just removing that.
Thanks.
Okay, so we,
Go ahead and then,
is
yes.
there any further
I
discussion?
don't think there is. Go ahead and call for the vote.
All right, Commissioner Burns.
Are you calling for the vote?
Yes, I am.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Fritz
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
Okay, and so the project is the use permit is approved. There is a 7-day appeal period. If anyone wants to submit appeal, they need to submit to the planning department by next Tuesday at 5 p.m. There is a fee and information on our website. After that time, the project will be final and you would be able to proceed to the building permit phase. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your support.
Great.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate
Yeah.
it. And we will take care of that lighting.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Goodbye.
Okay, moving on to item 5B, general plan consistency for the Sunset Avenue Taft Street pedestrian enhancements project.
Thank you. And Chair Fernandez, I just want to note, if any of the neighbors want to share their contact information with the architect at all, I'm happy, you can just leave it on a note or come up and let me know what your email is and I'm happy to pass it along.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so the next item is the Annalee Sunset and we crosswalk, and so this is general plan conformance. So anything that is, as you are used to doing in June, after the city council has reviewed the preliminary capital improvement plan, that plan comes to the planning commission and for the review of whether or not each of those projects that the city is working on is consistent with the general plan. We will be doing that in June again. However, the engineering department applied for and got a grant to do this crosswalk at the high school as part of the Safe Streets and some other grants that they were working on. And so we're coming to you with this now because the grant, I believe it's a quick straight project, so it's a fast moving kind of a project. And I will let Tony Bertolero, who is our engineering manager, go ahead and introduce the project and talk about it a little bit more. Tony? And I see a text from her, so hold on. Okay, so she's saying she can't get on. Tony, I'm going to try to make you a co-host if you can hear me.
In this pause, I just wanted to apologize to Deborah. I can't seem to turn my camera on. I don't know, my computer's not working, so otherwise I would have gotten that on. But...
Okay, thank you. My name is Tony Bertolero. I'm with GHD and I'm helping the city with the engineering department and the CIP project. As Carrie mentioned, there has to be a general plan consistency finding for all the CIP projects to be included. We normally do this once a year. However, this one, as Carrie mentioned, we had the opportunity to apply for a grant. This project was actually first requested by the school district probably about a year ago. And at the time we said we would include it in this year's CIP. However, because of the grant, we went to council a little early because we are hoping to get the design moving forward so that we can get the project constructed. We were hoping to get it constructed during the summer season, but there's because of some supply chain issues with the flashing signals, there's no way to get it done in the summer when school is out. So we've been working with the school district to possibly do it later around the October timeframe. So tonight's item is really to ask the Planning Commission to make a finding of general plan conformance for this particular project. And the project consists of a pedestrian crossing improvements at Sunset and Taft at Annalee High School, and also crosswalk improvements and ADA ramps at Sunset and Johnson. I think in the staff report, it mentions a third location for a ramp at Johnson Street and Sunset, where the West County Trail comes in. However, after looking at that location, it was just going to be too costly to include that, because if we did the crosswalks, we'd also have to do some trail extensions and some sidewalk gaps in order to make sense in that location. So we decided to pull that part of it out for cost reasons, and we'll probably add that as a future CIP project, as a trail, more of a trail extension type project. And we did meet with the school district on removing that particular ADA ramp at that location, and they were fine with it because it's not as integral to their crossings as the two other locations. And I think that's all I have for this particular project. We've been discussing this. This went to council on April 4th, and they approved this project pending this resolution of general plan conformance being adopted. And also we've been discussing this with the budget subcommittee for the capital improvement program. And so in fact, we just had a meeting today on it, which is a public meeting. And there was also a meeting on it on April 3rd. And so in terms of when this is going to go back to council, it'll go back to council when, as part of the CIP budget. There'll be a public hearing on this project as well as all the other projects that will be discussed for the 23-24 CIP. And that'll go to council in, let's see, I believe it's June 6th for a public hearing, and then adoption at the second meeting. And then in terms of further public outreach for this particular project, it will go to the council again once we work on the design. The council actually needs to approve the plans and specifications before we can go out to bid.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Questions from commissioners? Yep, go ahead.
I just had a question because one of the things that's mentioned is traffic calming striping on Sunset, I believe. And I was wondering what does that consist of?
Usually what happens is there'll be some striping that's going to be on edge striping just to kind of channelize cars a little bit better so that they don't go speeding around that corner.
I'm wondering if it was ever looked at, because I know like on the north side of the street, there's actually, it's all red curb. And I'm just wondering if that was ever considered to make that to be allowed to have parking there, just because that would also have kind of a slowing effect. You know, if there's cars, kind of parked cars on both sides of the street, that kind of also helps to narrow the lanes a bit. And anyway, I just wonder if that was ever considered or if that's possible. And I'm also wondering if there's any plans to, and so I know as you go, Sunset turns into, I guess, Johnson, there's no sidewalks on that stretch. Is that, I don't remember ever seeing that as part of any CIP, and I'm wondering if that's something that's being considered, because that would probably be, there's a very well-worn dirt path on the one side of Johnson Street, but it'd be nice if that was probably a sidewalk.
I'm writing down these comments, and should I go ahead and answer these, Carrie, right now, or should I hold off on all the questions?
I would go ahead, just like at council, commission ask questions of staff before we take public comment.
Okay. Regarding the parking on the north side to slow traffic down, I don't know if that was considered, but I could certainly check with the traffic engineer who will be designing this project, and that's W-Trans. And so I will bring that up and see if that's been considered or if that's a possibility. Of course, we'd have to talk with the school district on the project as well with respect to some of these proposed changes. And so I'll find out, and I will get back to Carrie, and she can pass on the response to the Planning Commission on what I find out. The second question has to do with sidewalk on Johnson. And yes, that's actually part of the Safe Routes to School report that was identified. However, that is not part of this particular project because we didn't have enough money to do that part of the project. However, that is something that will be considered in the future CIP.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions? I don't see Burns there. I've got a question. Before I ask it, I just wanted, if you could kind of, just for public information, this procedure of, how the council approves this project and then why it comes to us for the conformity for general plan.
Sure. Per state law and the enabling acts for zoning in general, so this is the power to regulate that comes down from the state. All cities must adopt a general plan with certain elements, including the circulation element. In this case is the transportation. The Planning Commission is the designated body for recommendation on any items contained in the zoning ordinance to City Council, as well as the body who, and obviously you have decision-making on certain items based on that. You are also the body that is responsible for recommending, reviewing and recommending the general plan to City Council. So if you remember that process, for those of you who were on the commission or the General Plan Advisory Committee, a few years ago when that was passed, that came through Planning Commission through a public hearing process prior to proceeding to City Council. And so what follows on to that is any project the city is doing also needs to be consistent with that general plan. You can't adopt a general plan saying we're going to, as I said earlier, there's traffic potential improvements at these 3 locations. The city can't just go and say, oh, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put a light over at Bob's house because I want Bob to have a light. It needs to be consistent with the community's general plan, which is really that guiding document. That I kind of call it that. That's sort of the Constitution, and you need to be consistent with the Constitution as you're making laws or as you're doing projects. So that all comes to the Planning Commission for review and guidance. You guys are the technical experts when it comes to that and making recommendations to the City Council. Is that? Yes, no, it's great. Yeah, I think it just because public might be wondering, well, why does it come to us? I have to ask this question, being a Annalee High School alumni, is it possible to paint the crosswalks blue, the school color blue instead of the green? What would it take to have that done? Tony and I have discussed actually doing crosswalks with different kind of painting, because I've seen them where they actually have like the zebra stripes in different countries. And, then they'll have a zebra mascot come out instead of like the slow cat come out and, shame people who misbehave in the crosswalk or help people across the crosswalk. But Tony?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that with crosswalks we have guidelines and standards that we have to follow. They're called Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, as well as crossings, crosswalks. And so they can only be a certain color, is my understanding, and also a certain type. They talked about the zebra type and also the ladder style. And so I could find out with W-Trans. Again, this is a good question. I have seen stamped concrete, for example, with crosswalks, and they look quite nice. And so in some cases you can have a little bit more flexibility, but I'm not particularly sure about this location. So I will find out about, are you talking about all the crosswalks that we're looking at, or just the one on Sunset and Taft?
Any ones that would be, adjacent next to the school, or
Okay.
students walking up the school, eventually the one on High School Road as well. But, either color or design, something, if it's possible. I know we have all these guidelines, but, let's do a little school spirit.
Okay, I will follow up on that and let you know.
All right, thank you.
It's probably a good idea good that they got rid of the tie-dye kind of scheme. That might be, you might be more likely to get a blue crosswalk than a tie-dye crosswalk.
Possibly.
So ask for the tie-dye and you might get the blue.
Okay, I like it. Okay, public comment is necessary, I'm assuming, so I will go ahead and open up for any public comments, either members of the audience or the citizens in attendance, or anyone online.
Hello. My name is Deborah Capria. I live at 6775 Sunset Avenue. And I have a few comments. And okay, and I'm gonna get them. I hope I'm gonna get them all out here. Well, I found out why I wasn't notified about it. There's some of us that would have liked to have known what was going on. And thank you for your presentation, Tony. I appreciate that. And the calming striping or stripping, whatever it is, I'm still not 100% sure what that is. And parking lights. And did I read somewhere that there was going to be lights going in somewhere, or was that just the lights on the crosswalk? That was a question.
Yes, there's also lights, street lights.
Street lights and
Yes, at particular locations.
okay, street lights on certain locations, and I wasn't sure what kind of street lights those were going to be and where exactly you're planning on putting those. And that Sunset Avenue is really, it's narrow, especially when you have cars parked all on the side of the street where I live, and then across the street where it's red. Parents park there temporarily, to pick up their students, and it does have it, it backs up. So it backs up, and it's an accident waiting to happen. So I don't know if you could just make that like a open area where cars can either park there or make it clear. I don't know, that would be really hard to do. But there was something that was really important you guys were talking about. Oh, I know what it was. It was crosswalk. There's the crosswalk up by Taft and Sunset, and then there's no other crosswalk until you get all the way around until you get to the end of Morris Street, Morris and Highway 12. And if you're thinking about putting another crosswalk in somewhere, because there's students that walk up and down the street all the time, like maybe Johnson and Sunset. I don't know if anyone's thought about that. And if you're making an area where for like wheelchairs or something, the sidewalk where I live, the foliage is so far out that the owner of the property does not keep the foliage cut back. I'm letting you guys in on all the inside information here. And the cars drive really fast on that street. Where I live, it's a straightaway, and then there's a turn on Johnson, and it's another straightaway. So if there's something to mitigate all that speeding, that would be really helpful. And I know I brought this up quite a few times with the police department, different police chiefs at different times. I've lived here quite a few years. And, we haven't had enough accidents there, so we can't do anything. I mean, we've thought about people on our street, speed bumps, other things, but then the fire department gets involved and they don't want, maybe that's changed because there's a new fire chief. But so that I'm very concerned about the street that I live on and all the other people, which is only about 4 houses. So if there's, I just would like to be updated. We would all like to be updated on what's going to happen. It's a great idea what you're doing to the crosswalk with the lights for the crossing, because kids are just looking at their phones and walking out into the street, and people come plowing around that corner very quickly. Thank you for taking that on and doing that. I'm glad you got a grant.
We can wrap up. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine. I'm giving you more time. Go ahead, because I think your comments are important, and you kind of
yeah,
represent your neighborhood. So go ahead.
Well, I'm about done. I would just like to know what exactly is going to be happening to our street. That's really important. And the cars do drive fast, and a lot of them, our students, but there's people in trucks that drive fast and it's a straightaway. So I don't know. What do you do for people who drive really fast? I mean, I've seen 2 accidents whipping around a turn and then knocking over garbage cans. And someone did come from the other direction and knocked into a Airstream. And that really was a big accident. So, so thank you for taking everything I said into consideration. Any questions you guys have for me, I feel honored to answer.
Okay, great. Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Appreciate it.
Hi, I just wanted to say that Carol Capria, and I wanted to just make some comments, and maybe I'll be repeating some of what Deborah said, but we walk on Sunset, Taft and Johnson a lot, and we drive there a lot. My sister lives there, so I visit her a lot. And it's a project that's been way overdue. As she said, we've been talking about it for years with different people, chiefs and planning and all the rest. And I'm really happy to hear that there are going to be crosswalks put in on Johnson and Sunset and Taft and Sunset. I'm sorry to hear that you can't afford to do the other one down at the other end by where there's that anyway over there behind the stands, the stands for the stadium. But it is a narrow street, yes, very narrow, with all the cars parked on the right and no cars parked in the red zone. It is a challenge at that for 2 cars to be going by and big trucks with their mirrors out to here. And I constantly stop on Taft and Sunset to let cars come. On Taft, you've got both sides of the street parking, and that's almost more of a challenge because you've got the cars, and it also seems a little bit narrower than Sunset. So I just wanted to reiterate a few things. Really excited to hear about this project, and it is it's unsafe, and it's been unsafe for a long time. So I'm glad to hear that it's going to be rectified. I'm really happy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carol.
Okay, and I do not see any public comment in the gallery, so I
Okay.
think we're complete.
I'll go ahead and close the public comments. And I don't know if Carrie, you or Tony want to make any comments based on what you heard from public comments.
I did have a couple of things to add, and that is, I guess there was a question regarding, is there going to be a crosswalk at Sunset and Johnson? And the answer is yes. That's the location that we're looking at to add a crosswalk, as well as an ADA ramps for accessibility. And I believe there's going to be a street light at that location. There's one on one side of the street, but there isn't on the other side. And so we're looking at adding a street light at that location. The other thing that was mentioned was there was a lot of interest in what the design looks like. And so what I could recommend, and I'll have to pass this on to the city manager, is that we could recommend taking the concept level design to city council. That way it could be, the design could be posted and the neighborhood would have an opportunity to take a look at it before we go through final design in case there's some comments. And so I think that would be an opportunity to do that. And I believe I heard all the comments about it being narrow. I agree. And so I guess there was a question about traffic calming. And I guess in a way, because it is narrow, it's already in a way, you've got traffic calming, but there's also congestion. So that's something that we'll have the traffic engineer, when they do the traffic calming design on there, to again, see if there's anything else that could be added to that for purposes of traffic calming.
Great. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, so we do have for this item, sorry, we do have a resolution, which we're asking the planning commission to consider and adopt. If you, basically, this is not for the idea of the project, but the fact that it's consistent with our general plan. There are several general plan findings included in that. I'll just review. The main one is that we routinely incorporate sidewalks and enhance pedestrian crossing facilities as part of new construction, new street construction, or in this case, enhancements to existing streets. And it certainly is aligned with both the city and the general plans, a focus on pedestrian safety and a walkable community.
Okay. So any commissioner want to make a motion for approval or a resolution?
I move that we approve the resolution, finding that the proposed Sunset Avenue Taft Street pedestrian crossing enhancements project CIP is consistent with our adopted general plan.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and call for the resolution vote.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. We'll start with Commissioner Burns,
Excuse me, yes.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we move on to item 6A, I'd like to propose a 5-minute quick stretch break. That's okay.
You're the chair. You get to do whatever
Let's
you
do
want.
that.
Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm having issues with my camera. Now it's telling me that the host has stopped making use of my camera.
Hmm.
Okay, yep.
Ready to continue? Okay. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and bring this meeting back to order. Moving on to item 6A, regular agenda items, Sonoma Applied Villages Quarterly Information Report as required by use permit.
Thank you. And I just need to start the recording back up. YouTube is already going, but here we go. Yeah, why don't you?
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and bring this meeting back to order. And moving on to item 6A, Sonoma Applied Villages Quarterly Information Report as required by use permit.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. And we do have Gregory Ferrone here from SAVES, Sonoma Applied Villages, for tonight's agenda item. But just as a reminder, this is for the Horizon Shine RV Safe Parking Village at 845 Gravenstein Highway North. This RV Safe Parking site opened in February 2022. At that time, it was a city council project and was considered a homeless shelter, which is allowed in that zone. However, the transition, there was a transition that happened with the extension of it that was requested by SAVES in the fall of 2022 for a 2-year operation under a temporary use permit for temporary residential from January 1st of this year through December 24th. And so that use permit was heard by this commission and approved. One of those conditions was that there be quarterly reports from SAVES to the Planning Commission so they could address or modify any conditions, understand what's going on. And one of those was also to make sure that appropriate transition planning was happening, since this is a temporary use. And actually the use would not be allowed, a long-term use of mobile home park is not allowed in that zone. So that does need to transition. Additionally, St. Vincent de Paul is the property owner for this. And I actually have a meeting with him tomorrow, Jack Tibbetts from St. Vincent de Paul, tomorrow morning with the city manager, assistant city manager, to talk about funding for long-term affordable housing at that site. Some of you may know, and so this isn't really SAVES, but just as an update of the long-term before we get into SAVES report. There was a mixed-use project with 11 units and about 10 or 11,000 square foot commercial first floor approved a number of years ago, which has expired. They have indicated that they're interested in moving forward with that, but working with an architect to modify the first floor to be 11 additional units for 22 units total. That is likely to, they're looking at applying with Project Home Key funds. And that will likely be on the second meeting of May for City Council to hear that. So if anyone out here is interested in that, that will be to be determined on when it's on the agenda, but it looks like likely the second meeting in May 16th. But in the interim, Horizon Shine has been continuing their operations. They're here tonight to give a report. This is the same report that was given to City Council last Tuesday, and City Council did have page 2 of the report. I outlined for you a little bit of some of the questions that the City Council had for SAVES. And part of that was based on, SAVES has been doing, in staff's view, a good job. And I'll speak for Vice Mayor Rich. She and I are the homeless and housing liaisons to service organizations and nonprofits. In our opinion, SAVES has been upholding the rules. They did have to ask a few folks to leave. So the council had questions about kind of what happens when those people leave. Are they being offered mental health services? If there's something going on, are they getting, what is assistance? We both want to make sure that, there's no danger to the communities for someone if they're being evicted for something violent or some other a larger issue, but also want to make sure that they get the help they need in terms of the mental health services. I did include some notes, and Gregory, you may have some questions on that tonight, or some further background on that. But in essence, SAVES does communicate with the county's continuum of care, which is I would call it the social service side of ending homelessness or addressing homelessness, and as well as West County Community Health Center, which is down on Gravenstein Avenue. Petaluma. It's between South Main and Petaluma. I'm not actually sure what which side their address is on. I think it's Petaluma Avenue across from the specialty hospital. The Measure O does hopefully provide some funding. If not, I'm actually interested in hearing about that, because that is something that I've identified as, we all passed Measure O sales tax for mental health services, and making sure that that is available within Sebastopol. Other than that, the written report is before you, and I don't know, do you want a presentation? Gregory is here for answering questions, but if there's anything, Gregory, did you want to present anything? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
As Carrie said, I'm Gregory Farron. I'm treasurer of the board of SAVES. I've also been on lots and lots of nonprofit boards over the last 40 years in this county. So I'm sort of perceived as that old guy who goes on everybody's boards and provides a lot of funds. In answer to the question of, I'm also an appointee of the Board of Supervisors for the Measure O Oversight Committee. So I know a little bit about Measure O and about its process, and the staff, the continuum of care, which Carrie noted, is been described as sort of the overall oversight committee for all things homeless in the county, and by extension of the membership on the continuum of several cities, east, west, north, south. They have 17 members, and they tried to make it so that it's representative of not only the county, but cities that are active in developing homeless. So Runner Park and Petaluma, and you all have a representative. In fact, Uniglass is your West County representative on the continuum. At a meeting recently of the continuum, and tomorrow, where they're having their monthly meeting, they have a report prepared by staff that summarizes sort of all the decisions that are being made or have been made as recently as tomorrow and the next day about Measure O and CDC and all the funding sources that have been given. Technically, some are still owned by the county and not given to the COC, but reported to them, and others are the COC decisions. The short of it is, 2 years ago, SAVES had $100,000 in outreach funds, which we had 2 outreach workers roaming around the county helping people in encampments. A year ago, we got money for Opening Horizon. The total of all of that was a little less than $500,000. Tomorrow's meeting is going to report that Measure O is giving us $723,000. CDC is giving us $149,000 and another 100. And ARPA gave us 5 months ago, $1.9 million. So SAVES has gone from a little agency that was pushing the limits of everything anyone thought of as a homeless house by saying, we're going to have RV camps, we're going to have tents, we're going to have encampments. We were the ones not being Burbank of building $500,000 units. We were the ones trying to make do for a whole lot less. And as most nonprofits, we in the beginning asked for far too little to be able to run the place and operate. And we've had, I think, significant problems just trying to keep Horizon open because we need a lot more money to do it than we originally got. I think with the money we're getting tomorrow and the next day, we're going to have enough money to do it well. Drug and alcohol counselors, lots of other people who the clients need, and we wanted to deliver. But as a little agency, you don't ask for the moon, you ask for what you think you can get. And so we've been struggling along on mostly a volunteer board running the place. We just got an executive director. We just got a resident manager we could pay a decent wage for. We just built a security team. So we've, the short of what I'm trying to say is we're a lot different than we were 6 months ago, and we'll probably be different 6 months from now. The answer to, if I were in your seat, considering what's it really going to be as a site, what is the future of 845, Gravenstein? Sure, Jack wants to do a low income housing if and when we can't do what we're doing anymore. And as you probably remember, 6 months ago, a year ago, we couldn't say to you, we'll be around in 23, 24. We won't, we didn't have any idea we could aggregate $3 million out of funding sources to continue. Now I can tell you, it's pretty certain we're going to be here next year. And we'll be a whole lot more organizationally robust and capable. Now, whether or not somebody like Jack and St. Vincent or this other group is sitting in the wings, waiting to be able to do something on the property if and when we can't continue, I'm also certain of that. It's a site that lends itself to that, and it has a history, and it has some landlords waiting in the wings. The same dynamic, Jack and St. Vincent buying a piece of property on Corby Avenue in Santa Rosa, is the format, the design we're using for the big one we're building. So it is a model that we're happy to say we're pioneering. Everybody else in the country is going, what are you doing? You know, how is this not a shelter, not a permanent housing, but something that provides stability, especially to folks who, as in your case, as you know, were occupying a street and causing another set of problems. So the only thing I guess I can add is that we believe that this is not an easy thing for us to do. We have had problems, I think, associated with having too little staff and a whole lot of new things we had to pioneer. But I think now I can say as a board member with, you know, probably the most increased funding of all of the fundings of all of the agencies in the county. I mean, there's 40 or 50 who went after the $12 million that COC is giving away tomorrow. And we're by far the biggest. We've gotten sort of accepted by everybody. Now, whether or not that means that, you know, we really will be able to perform at the level that support is being given, I got my fingers crossed. We're doing everything we can as a board. We're all volunteers, and we've got now some really good staff. We're actually, I won't say stealing staff from other agencies, but we're being perceived as that humane, not prison-like, not offensive provider that, as Adrian does, is trying to build community, trying to build self-responsible people who can build their lives again. And that takes a lot of care, and it takes a lot of sometimes making mistakes and having to come back and try it a new way. So that's our report. Adrian Brumley, who wrote it, did a pretty good job of being honest, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Great. Thank you.
And I can answer any questions I think that you have, especially related to finance.
I do have a question. So are you saying that the site that you're on now, you can continue to operate indefinitely, or is it for a period of time until it's decided? Sorry to have you.
Not perpetual. They don't give you any more than a year. The 780,000 that Measure O is giving is July 1st this year to June 30th next year. ARPA has a little more of a time frame. It's saying, you know, 4 or 5 months ago to December 2024. So it's the biggest, widest, but it's $2 million. There are other sources coming online through the legislature, and the amount of money that the COC is playing with now is twice as big as they've ever had. So, and so getting into their good guys, which, I mean, we used to be the ones pounding on the door saying, let us in. Now I think we're being let in. Now, whether that means we'll be always in is only dependent, I think, on whether we do a good job.
But let's say you do a good job and you continue to get funding. Do you have a limit as to how long you can be on that property? So the owners are willing, or the developers, whatever.
Well,
to wait
Catholic
it out?
Charities has been in since 2005.
Okay.
You know, I mean, there are agencies who have been building Burbank. I used to be on the board of Burbank. We've been building houses for 20 years. You know, I mean, it really, the sources of low income housing and what we're doing is we're moving into the low income housing area from the shelter, temporary housing. Because what we are doing is being perceived as, if you had money right now and you could go after, and if they could, if HUD, and we believe it to be possible in the next year or two, if HUD recognizes that a trailer on a foundation with us connected to a sewer is a house, you've got a park, you know, villa over here trying to get that decision right now, then what we're doing and the way we build it will be eligible for Section 8, for, you know, permanent housing, for the CDC, just like a Burbank housing. And if we can break into that territory, then and be considered the traditional again, you know, just something that everybody said, gosh, I don't know why we didn't think of that, you know, then we'll be a little more certain. In the arena of temporary housing, shelter, you know, transitional, we're becoming pretty traditional. And that isn't going to go away. Even if we build hundreds and hundreds in this, or thousands in this of other cheaper housing, you know, Burbank light type stuff, 1-bedroom studios, or get them in permanent, it won't solve the problem. We're always going to have, I think, a huge amount of people who are going to be in transition. And if the economy gets bad, we'll have even more. So, you know, we may be one foot in both worlds, building some things that look very much like permanent housing, and taking people from the street to there.
Oh, you might want to just stay.
Here.
So I think Carrie was alluding to this earlier. Our question and the reason why we wanted you to come back and report was because we wanted to know what plans were for actually vacating the site where you are and
Sure.
putting it in a more permanent place. Were you mentioning something like that? Was I just catching some of that, or is there another site that you're looking at?
We're planning on staying where we're at and building one twice as big. So but we have said to ourselves and all our clients, if we have to leave because we don't have money coming to operate and we have to close, and Jack and everybody else wants to, you know, start doing a permanent housing thing, we will transition those people somewhere. We're not abandoning people. We may have to abandon a site if we don't get enough money to do that site. Building a bigger one in Santa Rosa makes us capable of having another place for people to move to, having and supporting other providers of care. We work very closely with West County Community Services and everybody. And so we all know who each other's clients are and where they're moving. We've had people go from our place to theirs. So, you know, it's sort of, if our purpose is to help someone from the street get to some place that they can stay for a permanent, you know, for some period of time, it's a ladder with rungs, and we're building the rungs. I kept telling people, you know, you can have all the 80%, 90% of AMI Burbank built houses in the world, but unless you get people capable of being that tenant, of solving all the problems they, you know, need to solve, to have a property manager take a risk, having their own lives together enough to do it, you got to provide some rungs to get them there. And we're providing those rungs. And it isn't that we're only providing ours and not looking around for everybody else's. Every time there's a new building built in any part of this county that has that inclusionary zoning, that has the requirement that they do it, I'm trying to get some of it, you know, from our place to there. so that they can make that leap. It may be that they need 2 or 3 ladder, rungs before they get there. But I want everybody who's low income, wherever they came from, wherever their current condition, to be able to get to what we think is, the old time, I'm going to have a rental place. I'm going to stay there. There are so many barriers to getting people to that point, and we're working on trying to help reduce those barriers.
Right, and if I may just add to that, so West County Community Services operates Park Village, which is a mobile home park. They do have, I think, 8 to 10 units that are actually owned by West County Community Services as the long-term tenants have either vacated. Usually their units are in a condition that they just need to be removed. The fixed mobile homes also are susceptible to flood damage. Like 2019, they did have a number of units with damage. What West County Community Services is doing is, well, they were doing fifth wheels that can be towed out with a pickup truck. They actually have a new tiny home there as a different model, also on wheels, so that it can be evacuated in the case of a floodplain. But we also, as a city, wrote and received a grant to install 2 pads with RV hookups. And so I think what Gregor is alluding to is that, when those West County Community Services, sort of that next step up where it's not the safe parking kind of a site, it is a village, Park Village, it is a village, and it has mostly long-term tenants. It's, owned by the city. So, and it operates, it's in a mobile home park zone. So it operates as such. And so people from those RVs, there's a case manager on site that meets with folks in terms of job training, finding housing, those types of things. So as folks from might transition from the saves to there, and then from there, from an RV potentially to another site, or whatnot, or into affordable housing that's more permanent elsewhere. And so that's that continuum of care. And this took me like 4 years to figure out. So I'm just trying to help everyone along. That's kind of the continuum of care on the like how you might work through the system. West County Community Services also does rapid rehousing, which is really people who are in imminent danger of being evicted. I think Sonoma County Legal Aid talked about that. They actually receive funding for assisting people with those gaps and things like that as part of their some of the funding they get from that continuum of care is to kind of prevent that person from becoming homeless in the first place. So this is kind of a
there's 500 units that Dave Kiff, who is the homeless services director for the county, who used to be the director of community development, the housing authority of the county, is pulling state money to buy, like Sebastopol Inn, but there are others being just plain built, and those units are dedicated in many of the senses to the lowest income, homeless, mentally ill clients. I have one down the street from where I live in Santa Rosa that called Sage Commons that is, had a $10 million allocation from the state and required, because of the 10 million, that it go for the hardest to house homeless, mentally ill. It's a perfect place for some of the clients coming out of our place. It's permanent. It's Section 8 funded. It's operational. It doesn't have to worry about going back to the CDC to get its money every month, because it's like every apartment complex, it's got a source of money that pays the rent of the people there at a price that will pay the loans that it took to build it. If I built hundreds of units before I became a straight board member. After retiring, I was the executive director of Community Support Network, the agency that was formed when Reagan dumped everybody out of the state mental hospitals. We built shelters, duplexes, apartments, houses, subdivisions, a whole host of laddered rungs on the ladder. And we took people from one to another based on the case managers and support that we could give them to improve their lives. The whole system, like CSN, is trying to do the same thing, trying to build low interest loaned housing so we don't have to be a marketplace charging high rents. If we don't have to charge high rents, we can put the money into support services, into case managers, into drug and alcohol counselors, into halfway houses, into places that our clients need support from in order to get their lives together.
Okay, thank you. Let's open up for public comment at this point.
Sure. And I do not see any members of the public here at this time, so I
Yep.
think you can go ahead and
And
close that.
No letters or.
I will note, we did receive some public comment, both written comments, which are included in the staff report, as well as some, conversation if someone wants to hear some other side and council members' thoughts at the last council meeting.
And we, no really action required, it's just more informational.
Correct. This is an informational quarterly report. If you do have questions or things you would like included the next time, that would be helpful to know. Both Vice Mayor and myself have a monthly meeting with SAVES, and they have quarterly reports. Actually, Vice Mayor Rich and I just scheduled those all out through next January, as Chair Fernandez, you probably saw on the forecast I sent to you.
Yep.
And I'm going to repeat that, which is just because of the microphone and which is to extend a invitation to any of the commissioners who might want to go on a tour of it, and you can get a hold of them through me if you'd like.
All right, thank you. Thank you for all your work and passion and, getting people housed. Thank you. All right, move on to item 7A, Libby Park Fencing Subcommittee Assignment.
Thank you. So there's no agenda report for this. However, I think most of you are aware from our tour, and yes, I do still owe the commission minutes from Kathy, and I have your notes. I need to add a few things into the formal minutes to get things there. But we did look at the fencing at Libby Park, and we had some discussion about taking it out, and there was definitely community members we heard from strongly because of the number of children in the park and smaller children in the preschool that they did want some sort of fencing. We said we don't want chain link. Thank you very much. Which is unfortunately what's in Public Works budget. However, there is an opportunity if we act quickly within the next few months to go. Rotary has volunteered to construct the fence. We would need to get a design worked out of what that could be. And it could be something very simple like hog wire, those types of things. But what this request on the agenda is for is if there are a couple of members of the commission who would be interested in working on that with Dante, the Public Works Superintendent, Dante Del Prete, and myself to help with that effort. And I think we'd need to purchase the materials before the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. And then I think whether it's constructed now or next year, that would probably not be the biggest deal. But obviously, once you have the materials, we could go ahead and construct it.
Okay. I'd be one volunteer. You can count on me. So
Okay.
let me know. Just contact me and you know what I need to do.
Okay. And I see Commissioner Burns has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Meeting and let me know. And maybe I can help too.
It's really tempting to want to raise my hand, but I just can't take on anymore.
Yeah.
I do love that. actually.
If you did, I was just going to slap your hand down.
Thank you. Oh, goodness.
So was Deborah offering to volunteer as well?
Oh.
Commissioner,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now-
and now,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, yeah, I was unmuted. I don't know. I was just saying I don't know exactly what you need from help, but reach out to me privately and I can see if there's anything I can do.
Excellent. And I think it's really just kind of working out a design and what it should be, and possibly coordinating with the Rotary folks a little bit.
Do they have Rotary have any individuals that can help us with that design, or how would we, being
So
professional men.
Public Works certainly
Okay.
can lend a hand in terms of some practical, like spacing of fence posts and things like that, I think are not an issue. It's more, what does the commission feel it should look like?
Okay.
The commission was in favor of, and my suggestion of removing the fencing. I was a free range kid, I can't help it. We've heard they want fencing. We know we don't want chain link. What height, and what should it look like? What materials, that type of thing is really what we're looking at. So it's not a complicated design. It's
Okay.
just,
What's the height of it that you think would be?
that's part of what the subcommittee needs
Okay.
to help with. I would imagine it's probably either 42 inches, which is 3.5 feet.
Is that what it is now? Or
I
was-
would guess it's probably about that.
Okay.
It's not like overheads. We could all see over it and
Yeah.
touch the tops of it. So,
Okay.
but that's enough to stop small kids from kind of running into it,
Got it.
running into
Sure.
the pond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I may have collected some photos from online, and if I did, I'll find those and
Oh,
pass
that would
them
be excellent.
along
The
to you.
design
some things I thought might
ideas,
work. Yeah.
that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go on to item number 8, Planning Director's Report.
Thank you. I do have a couple items, and I'm actually going to start off with the one that's maybe a continuum of the discussion we just had on the housing resources. And that is, there was, and I apologize, I didn't think about it until I had a meeting with Vice Mayor Rich today. She and I are the liaisons on housing and homelessness to the City Council. We are doing quarterly reports on various things that are going on. So not just SAVES, but West County Community Service. I sit on, I'm actually the chair this year, or Sebastopol's the chair of the Community Development Commission's Cities and Town Advisory Committee. That's the group that kind of, I call Continuum of Care the social side, because we are the physical side. We fund physical projects. So physical housing developments, although there is some social, there's some going back and forth that does go through it, like the rapid rehousing and whatnot. But a lot of what we do is larger affordable housing projects, community development block grant funding, things like that. So that kind of stuff is in that report. And I can certainly we're actually planning on combining those two reports into a part A and B of a single agenda item for council. And I'm thinking that might actually be useful for you guys as well. We don't have to discuss it, can just be there. And if you have any questions, I'll be hopefully able to answer most of them. The one item of interest that was in that is that Elderberry Commons, which used to be the Sebastopol Inn, as most of you know, the county owns that right now, and it was being operated during the COVID emergency as COVID vulnerable housing. Now that the COVID emergency has ended, it needs to transition to permanent supportive housing, and that will be for very low income folks. So that's kind of that next step up in the rung of the ladder of permanent housing. It's basically studio apartments is what they'll be outfitted with small kitchen, kitchenettes, 31 units, and they are looking at actually transitioning away from the county owning it and having a nonprofit. They're still working out the details of that. That's expected to go to the Board of Supervisors in June. However, they, at the request of our council and Supervisor Hopkins, are having a town hall meeting Monday, May 1st at 6 p.m. So that's this coming Monday. So if anyone is interested in that, we are going to be getting that word out to folks who are, there's sort of 3 different groups that I could think of. One is obviously the homeless advocates and housing advocates. There's certainly the business community in downtown. We'll be outreaching to the Downtown Association and Chamber, and particularly to the Gravenstein station folks who are directly adjacent. And then we have some who are monitoring fiscal of how cities and counties are spending their dollars in the state. So would also likely be interested in that. So we're doing outreach, but it is next Monday, May 1st. It is a webinar only. and it is being run by the county because they are really the city's, I would say, a stakeholder. We're not really a partner because they did the project on their own. Obviously, council supported the project or discussed the project and then supported it when it happened initially. So that's the transition that's going to be happening this year. And so there'll be information about where are those residents going? Have they found housing for everybody? They are transitioning all the residents out, both because it's a slightly different operational, model. It's basically people who are ready for a lease, just like an apartment lease you would have anywhere else. And also because they can't really do the construction with folks in there. It's just too expensive, too difficult, and would take too long. So, but that is May 1st.
What time do you think? Do you know when?
It is at 6 p.m. And I do know there will be information on the city's website. We reached out to Holly Hansen, our PR person, today. So when I get that email, I will just send it to all of my boards and committees so they all know. So that was the big one that I wanted to make sure and not to forget. Woodmark Apartments, we have issued building permits for their first phase. I don't recall if that was coming up or done at our last meeting. And that's for 48 units of very low and 47 very low or low, and one normal, which is the manager's unit, the on-site manager. And they're anticipated to start construction in the next week or so. As I noted, the city is getting a new website in the next couple weeks or so. A couple administrative things I just wanted to let you know. We did receive approval to, as most of you know, our senior admin aide was on a leave. She's no longer with the city. We did receive approval from council to change that position to a planning technician. So someone who can review the sign permits, tree permits, those types of things, as well as do the administrative work. We have gone through the recruitment of that. We're in the midst of that. We've had a first round of interviews last week, and we're doing second interviews tomorrow. So keep your fingers crossed on that. And that would be a great transition we're hoping to have in the next couple of months, which would be great. And just so you all know, John Jay is going to be on vacation from May 1st to May 25th. So please be kind. It's a much deserved vacation. He's been with the city a year and a half now, and I couldn't be happier. So I want to thank him publicly for his work and wish him a joyful vacation in Europe. So
I just have a short announcement from relaying from Mayor Hinton regarding the parade this weekend, and asking that any commissioners wishing to be part or inviting to be part of the ensemble, I guess. And it's basically show up at 9:30 by Annalee High School and locate the vehicle. It's probably an hour and a half commitment at most. Maybe practice your parade wave. And then each of us are responsible to bring, candy or something to kind of throw out there. So, trying to fill it with bodies, and if you're, considerate, I think it would be a good thing to have representation from commission as well. I will be there.
thank you, Chair Fernandez. That was actually something that Vice Mayor Rich also asked me to make sure that she had sent an email invitation through me recently. And so, yeah, if you are planning, just so they can kind of get a numbers count, if you send me or Vice Mayor Rich directly an email and let her know, that would be great on that one. And then I did want to know, will have a part-time staff consultant coverage associate planner a couple days a week while John is gone. So, hopefully we'll be able to kind of manage. We do anticipate having our next couple of meetings. We have coming up, we have the Planning Commission rules revision, the work plan. We did receive a use permit, and I have a planner who is actually working on the Barlow Hotel. She's also working on the Foundry building, which has been, it requires a use permit. which will be coming to you probably in May. I'm not quite sure yet. They've got a couple items they need to submit to us still, but that's a use permit for a climbing gym. And so we do anticipate, just in terms of your schedules, having meetings, certainly the May meetings and June meetings, and we're getting a little busy, so.
Yeah, and for quorum issues, if vacations come up, please let Carrie know as soon as and as far
Yes.
ahead as possible, so we can kind of.
Thank you. And
Prepare
that is a little bit more complicated now with the AB 2449. You can participate that way, but we still need to make sure we have an in-person quorum. And if there's meetings where we can still discuss without a quorum, and get stuff ready for next meeting if we need to, if there's things like the rules or things like that that need to be done.
Just as a heads up, I will not be here June 13th.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. No other questions, then I will adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting scheduled for May 9th, 2023, 6 p.m. at the Sebastopol Youth Annex. There you go.
So what do I do? Zoom.